Hello everyone, my name is Prodesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video I want to do some philosophy. I want to talk to you about the notion of having faith in another person. Having faith in another person in light of the fact that we do not control that other person. I will elaborate on this theme by first introducing you to an ancient Greek story. It is a love story. It is the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus and Eurydice are names, and this is the English pronunciation of those names. In modern Greek, we pronounce them as Orpheas and Eurydice. Orpheas, Eurydice. And this is the pronunciation I will be using in this video. Let me then introduce you to the story of this myth, and then we will discuss the philosophical insights therein. Orpheus and Eurydice are a young couple. They just got married. Orpheus is the renowned musician. He is known throughout the Greek world for his musical acumen, for his peerless talent in music. He is basically the best musician the Greek world has ever seen. And so the young couple are enjoying their marriage. They have a good time together. They are in love and everything is great. But shortly after the day of their wedding, Eurydice is involved in an accident and she gets bitten by a viper. And this proves to be a lethal bite. So she dies and Orpheus discovers it, discovers what happened, and is devastated. So his songs are now filled with sorrow and grief, and Orpheus is lamenting his fate. He is lamenting the fact that Eurydice died at such a young age, that Eurydice died shortly after their marriage. And Orpheus considers this unfair. Why would this happen to me? Why such a fate? We were so happy together. We are so young. She was my love, and we just got married. Why this? Why me? So Orpheus didn't like it, didn't like this state of affairs, and eventually he mustered the courage to do something about it. He was like, okay, I don't tolerate this. I will not accept this. The gods are wrong. I will do something about it. And he decides to go to the world of the dead, where Eurydice now is, and retrieve her, bring her back to the world of the living. Long story short, Orpheus goes to the world of the dead and finds the ruler of that world. The worlds of the living and the dead are kept apart by this ruler of the world of the dead. So the ruler is the god known as Hades. In Greek, it's Hades, and this is the pronunciation I will be using. So Hades is the god that is responsible for keeping apart the worlds of the living and the dead. He presides over this cosmic arrangement. But Orpheus does not care about any of that. His sense of justice is more personal. It's more about his experience in the world. He doesn't care about the bigger picture. He doesn't care about the designs of the gods. So he finds Hades and he seeks to talk with him. And he tells him what he thinks about this situation. He is like, I think this is unfair. I think this is not right. We are so young. We love each other so much. Blah, 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 blah. Eurydice has to come back with me to the world of the living. Hades is not impressed because Hades is applying the relevant rules uniformly. The role of Hades is to preserve this cosmic arrangement that I mentioned earlier. He doesn't care about the individual cases such as that of Orpheus. But Orpheus insists and he plays his music and he sings, and eventually, such is his plea, such is the sentiment that goes into it, that all of the world of the dead pauses and pays attention to Orpheus. So everybody there is moved by the story of Orpheus and by the heart that he puts into that effort he is doing over there. So Addis notices this. So notices that Orpheus is exceptionally gifted, and of course understands that given the talent of Orpheus, given this godly ability of his to play music, he is favored by some god. So this is like, okay, fine, I will grant you this exception. You are allowed to leave this realm with Eurydice, and you are allowed to take her back to the world of the living on one condition. You, Orphea, will be leading the way, and Eurydice will be following in your footsteps. But you are not allowed at any point to turn around and check what is happening to Eurydice. You have to continue forward. So Orpheus is like, okay, fine, I will do it. And failure to do so means that Eurydice is condemned to stay in the realm of the dead, while Orpheus will be banished from that realm, won't be allowed to enter again, and he will be forced to stay in the world of the living without Eurydice. So the couple venture off to their journey back to the realm of the living, with Orpheus leading the way. At some point, because this is a long journey, Orpheus starts to lose his faith. And he starts to worry. Is Eurydice still around? I cannot hear her. I cannot feel her. I don't know what is happening. Maybe I am too quick on my feet and she couldn't keep up with me. Maybe something happened to her. What is going on here? So he decides to turn around and take a look. And to his surprise, as soon as he turns around, Eurydice is right there next to him. But because now Orpheus is violating the agreement with the god, Eurydice is immediately pulled back into the realm of the dead, while Orpheus is ejected, is kicked out from the realm of the dead, back to the world of the living, where he is now forced to live the rest of his days without the company of Eurydice. And this is basically the end of the story. Now, of course, this story is symbolic, and these are allegorical meanings, and we can learn a lot about them. It's not about, oh, what should I do if I ever happen to talk with some god in the realm of the dead? Of course not. This is not a literal kind of narrative. To understand better these meanings, let me first introduce you to the character of Addis. In the Greek worldview, there is no such thing as pure evil, or pure good for that matter. All instantiations in the world, all phenomena, are of admixture. So there is something that is relatively good, but it comes together with something that is relatively bad, or something relatively bad mixed with something that is relatively good. And this, we understand it in practical terms through the teachings about moderation and through the teachings of avoiding the extremes. For example, water is good for you, but if you drink, let's say, 30 liters of water in one day, I don't know, just a random number, if you drink a lot of it in a day, it will do you harm. It will deplete you of all the important nutrients that your body should have. Vinegar is good for us, but if you put 1 liter of vinegar in your salad, you might as well, you might die from it. It's too toxic. A little bit is okay. Too much of it is a problem. And this is the idea of what the difference is between remedy and poison. It is a matter of degree. And so the Greeks would think in terms of the degree of something, not in terms of absolutes. Oh, it's good, oh, it's bad. Water good, vinegar bad, kind of thing. No. The degree that you use it is good or bad. It's the degree that will determine it. It's not the thing in itself that is good or bad. It's how you go about it. So it's kind of a more nuanced understanding of things. But it is an understanding of things that does not involve absolutes. So because there are no pure bad, pure evil, and pure good in the world, by extension, there is no embodiment or agent of pure evil or pure good for that matter. So Hades is not a diabolical kind of figure. He is not the devil, as it were. He is not there to trick people. He is not there to undermine the humanity's moral standing and to lead people into their ruin, sort of thing, and to torture them and to do whatever kind of terrible thing to them. No. Hades is there to preserve this cosmic arrangement that I mentioned earlier, this balance, this separation between the worlds of living and the dead. And he does this in a fair way. He does this by being just. He doesn't do it by being cruel and by punishing or manipulating the souls of humans or whatever. So, in this case, we have to understand that the condition that Hades imposes on Orpheus is not malevolent. It is not a gimmick. It is not some kind of trick where Orpheus will lose no matter what. So, we have to understand it for its educational value. We have to understand what the god, here in the myth, the god, what the god tries to teach us. So, what should we be learning from this condition? What is the point of this instruction not to turn back? I think the point is that you have to show whether you have faith in the person you love or not. If you have faith in Eurydice, if you believe truly that Eurydice's wants are in sync with your wants, then you don't need to look around. You know that she will eventually follow you and she will eventually do what you are doing because your plans, your aspirations are in sync. But if you don't have faith in Eurydice, then of course you will demonstrate that. And Orpheus is demonstrating that by turning around. And we may say that Orpheus doesn't have faith in the god either. And why wouldn't he have faith in the god, given that the god is just, given that the god is not a trickster? This is about the relationship between the two people. This is about the relationship between Orpheus and Eurydice. It's about the dynamic between them. Because Orpheus is demonstrating this apparent love, this apparent passion, this commitment, this desire to do whatever it takes to rescue Eurydice. But what about his motivation? What about that? Because the way it is presented in this story, we might think, we might infer that Orpheus doesn't have the right mindset, doesn't see the bigger picture. He is driven by this subjective understanding of morality that he has, about this practical way of understanding matters of right and wrong, which is a personalized understanding, but he doesn't see the bigger picture. And he doesn't consider Eurydice in any of his decisions. He is acting on the basis of what he thinks both of them want. But he doesn't know. He just does what he wants and expects that what he wants is what Eurydice also wants. In other words, Orpheus commits a grave mistake, the way I see it. It's the mistake of believing that he can claim ownership over Eurydice, that his will, his volition can extend to another person, that Eurydice is a function of Orpheus's will, that basically whatever Orpheus wants, Eurydice does. And this is wrong. This is wrong because we do not own anyone out there. We do not own another person. No matter how much we love them or they love us, we still do not own each other. We are together as fellow travelers in this world. We are in sync. We are in the same wavelength, as it were. But one is not an extension of the other in the sense that one side can unilaterally impose conditions on both sides. So the notion of faith here is about this. It is about understanding that we do not own the other person, that the other person is not an extension of our volition, a function of our will, and that the other person has the autonomy, the independence to do as they see fit, or as the conditions, the prevailing conditions, determine, the set of arrangements, the set of factors in their interplay determine. And that the outcomes between people may be divergent, may be different, despite what those involved may want. So I think that this notion of faith here brings us rather to this understanding of non-ownership and how we should appreciate the fact that in a relationship we do not have this kind of claim on the other person. We do not have it in a cosmic sense. We do not have it in the sense that Addis is dealing with. We do have it, or we think we have it, in a conventional sense. And this is true for ownership in general. In conventional terms, we claim ownership of things or of titles or whatever, or ideas. But in reality, in the way of how things are, when we strip away the conventions, all those items are independent of our volition. All those items can exist without our interference and can be subject to states of affairs regardless of our will. And this is true for inanimate objects, but it is also true for animate ones as well. Like you may say that I own my dog, but this is just a legal arrangement of me being the guardian of the dog, you know, the person who has to take the dog to the veterinarian or something like that. But I don't own the animal in the sense of the animal being an extension of my will. It's not an extension of my selfhood. It is separate. And no matter what I do, no matter the training, no matter the love, no matter the attention, no matter the efforts, this cosmic arrangement cannot be undone. It is beyond our control. So the difference between the world of things as they are, regardless of conventions, and things as they are because of conventions, is kind of what this is all about here. And so we see the notion of Orpheus that has about justice as opposed to the notion of justice at the cosmic scale that Hades applies. So Orpheus thinks of just his own case, his own situation, and he's like, we are young, we love each other, this is unfair. But from the perspective of the cosmos, there is no such thing as right or wrong when it comes to matters of life or death. It makes no difference whether Eurydice dies shortly after marrying Orpheus or at a late age after having spent a lifetime with Orpheus, or even if she was never born at all. It makes no difference at the cosmic scale. It matters to the individuals involved, but that is from their perspective. From the global scale, what is happening is the ordinary operations of the cosmos, namely the fact that figures, forms of life, are transfigured and they are transfigurable. So they come and go and they come and go. And you can think of this like in the case of the human body, we are made up of all those chemical elements. We have water, we have carbon, we have iron, we have salt, we have all these elements. And we are now in this figure, we are now in this form that we call the human being, but eventually this form will be decomposed and will become again all those elements, and these elements will combine with other elements and engender new figures and so on. This happens at the cosmic scale with planets, with solar systems, with galaxies, etc., with everything we know about. So from the perspective of the cosmos, from the perspective of the justice that Hades applies, there is nothing wrong here. It's business as usual. It's transfiguration again and again. Yet another case of transfiguration. So we see this distinction here. And now this distinction between our understanding of affairs, the affairs that are contingent on our convention, that depend on our intersubjective, our interpersonal arrangements, as opposed to affairs that unfold regardless of what we want, such as, for example, the fact that a person is endowed with talents. This is not a matter of our conventions. We do not get to decide what kind of talents we have. We are born into this world and are endowed with a certain set of talents, with a given configuration of personality and physical attributes and predisposition to certain types of behavior and so on and so forth. But this is given whether we like it or not. We never got to choose. It's not a matter of our volition. It is a cosmic arrangement. And the same is true for matters of life and death. We do not get to decide whether we are mortal or not. This is a fact of the cosmos. It just is. So it is not about whether it is right or wrong. That makes no sense. Matters of right or wrong make sense when our conventions are involved, because they apply to states of affairs that we can institute, that we can determine, that we can formulate, and we can configure, and we can adapt our behaviors to them. There are two Greek words to describe these two worlds: the world where things happen regardless of our volition, and where things happen as a function of our volition or our intersubjective arrangements and so on. So one is the world of pragmata. And you may know pragmata from the word pragmatic, for example. So when we are pragmatic, we understand how things stand, and in principle, this means we understand how things are outside our control. And the world of chrimata. Chrimata are those things, it's this part of the world where, so my dog is here and wants some attention, some love and faith. So the world of chrimata is this realm of this domain of things that depend on our use of them, our interpretation of them, our interaction with them. We are the ones who add meaning to them, add value to them. And we can think of those such as cultural artifacts, attitudes, beliefs, the meaning of words, the significations we attach to those words or to symbols and images, the myths that we make, the laws that we create, and so on and so forth. Money and the government and states and borders, all that. These are all human affairs. These are all products of our institution, of us jointly bringing those into existence. And they have an existence because we believe in them. Like if all of us, let's imagine, if all of us do not believe that the government has any power over us, the government has no power over us. Because who will enforce that power if all of us believe that the government has no power over us? So for the government to have power over us, for the notion of sovereignty to make sense, we have to acquiesce to it. On its own, it doesn't have any value. Its value is instituted into existence. It comes from the fact that we together, tacitly or overtly, bring it into life through our actions, through our patterns of behavior. So these are the chrimata. And in the world of the chrimata, we of course have the conventional understanding of property, the conventional understanding of ownership, of claims, of this is mine, this is yours, this is right, this is wrong, this is just, this is unjust, and so on. There is an ancient Greek philosopher, by the way, since I am talking about pragmata and chrimata, by the name of Protagoras. And if I were to guess by how Greeks behave, I am sure that the friends of Protagoras were calling him Prot. So yeah, there is that. So Protagoras said, and there is this famous saying, that human is the measure of all chrimata, which is, however, mistranslated as Protagoras saying, human is the measure of all things. And then, of course, that would be easy to consider absurd. But when you think that human is the measure of all chrimata, of those that are in that they are, and to the extent that they are, and of those that are not in that they are not, this is a much more serious insight. Now, it's not as absurd as it would otherwise sound. The measure of all things, am I the measure of, I don't know, the speed of light, or maybe of the perception of the speed of light, but not of the speed of light itself? But with regard to chrimata, this is something we can discuss, yes. Human is the measure of all chrimata. We are the measure of whether sovereignty exists or not, property rights exists or not, what these words mean or not, and so on and so forth, for all the things that we have in our world. I am mentioning all this to help us understand the sense of ownership that is misplaced, and the sense of ownership that may have been there when Orpheus was trying to reclaim Eurydice from the world of the dead. Because we are dealing with our everyday affairs and we are involved in this human world of chremata. And it is understandable that sometimes we lose sense of the bigger picture. And we lose sense of the fact that there are cosmic magnitudes outside our control, that there are pragmata which are not contingent on our institutions, on our volition, on our dealings, on our interpretation of things. So when something bad happens, it's easy for us to say, oh, this is bad. And this is terrible. Why did this happen to me? What did I even do to the gods? And the answer is nothing. The gods are not punishing us, nor they are rewarding us. This is a cosmic arrangement, which is indifferent to the individual affairs of what we are dealing with. And what this means is that we have to not feel entitled to anything. We are not entitled to a happy marriage, for example. We are not entitled to a long life. We are not entitled to a healthy life. We are not entitled to a free life or whatever. Whatever we do in our world, we will have to do it within the confines of our institutional arrangements. Yes, we can change an institution that we do not like. We can abolish slavery, for example, because slavery is something that is instituted into existence. We can abolish injustice, the unfair treatment between people, segregation, for example. But what we cannot do is abolish death, because death is outside our control. It's not a matter of our dealings. We are not instituting it into existence. And so we have to understand that there is a cosmos out there, outside our little affairs, outside our control. And we have to accept what this cosmos is doing. And by accepting this fact, we will no longer feel unfairly treated. We will be dealing with things, or favorably treated for that matter. We will be dealing with things in a manner that is tranquil, in a manner that is equanimous, in a manner of not being disturbed. Something good happens, well, it just happens. Something bad happens, well, it just happens. And so we will not feel that we can undo this cosmic order. And just because I am so talented, just because I am so determined, just because I love Eurydice so much, in the words of Orpheus, just because I am so special, I can get an exception. And the answer is you can't. You really can't. Back to the point of love in relation to faith. I think this is key for interpersonal relations that are on this balance of equanimity. Because if you are engaged in a relationship with the expectation that you control the other person, with the expectation that you will be imposing rules that the other person just follows because you want them to follow those rules, I think this is a recipe for a relationship that will be troublesome. I think a relationship, love in this case, which comes together with faith, is about having faith in the other person, that given that we are on the same wavelength, we will remain on this wavelength provided that it is our natural condition, that we are honest about it. So we will be together because this is a natural fact. And if for whatever reason our paths diverge, if we no longer sing to the same tune, if we no longer are on the same frequency, so be it. This again is a fact of the world. Of course, there are practical considerations in everyday human affairs, such as what happens if there are kids involved, what happens if we need to consider matters of mutual interest, such as, okay, we may no longer love each other, but it is beneficial for us to stick together because this way we have more money or whatever, and we can both survive. So there are all those considerations which are practical and important. I'm not saying they are not relevant, but what I'm saying is that when it comes to love, what matters is faith for love itself. Love is not about rules. It's not about control. It's not about power. It's not about domination. These notions will do harm to love. All these tendencies for control and disempowerment of the other side, of the other person, they won't benefit the relationship. And if there is a relationship, it would be a relationship of bondage, a relationship of some kind of domination, some kind of control. Control in the sense of continued pressure, continued violence. But not in the cosmic sense, because again, you do not control the other person's will. The other person still has a will of their own, still has an independence. Even if they are in this conventional arrangement where they are disempowered. So I think Adis here in this myth is teaching us a lot of important values, provides a lot of interesting insights about understanding the difference between cosmic matters and human affairs. There is a difference in the scope of application. We have something more narrow here and something considerably wider when we are talking about the cosmos at large. And it is about us not having ownership over another person, no matter how much we love that person. And that love involves faith. Because without faith in the other person, there will have to be something else to keep the people together. And that something else is likely to be a form of pressure, of coercion. Pressure which may be peer pressure, social pressure, not pressure from the individuals involved necessarily. Or pressure in the form of responsibilities attached to social pressure. So it can be a variety of things. But it is not about the two people operating in sync. So if those two people are not operating in sync, how can Orpheus expect Eurydice to be behind him all the way? And it is the lack of faith that Orpheus has in Eurydice which causes him to lose Eurydice forever. At least while he is alive. Then, of course, we can write another myth about what happens afterwards. But that's the point of myths. We just make them up as we go. But we do it to discuss certain deeper insights. There is entertainment to them. There is educational value to them. But fundamentally, it's about talking about the things that our everyday things and discussing them in ways that have mnemonic value, in ways that we can remember. You never forget about this affair of Orpheus going to the world of the dead, of Orpheus turning around only to see his beloved Eurydice being pulled back into the world of the dead. These are powerful images. And we can remember those stories, and we can talk about those stories. And by talking about them, we can discover more meanings. And hopefully, we can apply those lessons, those insights to our everyday affairs and become a little bit more considerate in our behavior, in our outlook, when we are dealing with other people. That's all for today, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. Take care and goodbye for now.